Spotlighting Hawaii's leaders.
We want to bring in Governor David E.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Lieutenant Governor, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Mayor Derek Kawakami.
Thank you so much, Senator, for being here.
Spotlighting the issues.
Where is the virus right now in our community?
How much is this overall going to cost the state?
How are you responding to the community's concerns? Talk about the level of citations that you guys are writing.
Spotlight Hawaii with Yanji Denise and Ryan Kalei Suji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Beachside Roofing.
Aloha and good morning. Thank you for joining us here in the middle of the week. I'm Yanji Denise, joined by Ryan Kalei Suji. This is Spotlight Hawaii. The sun is shining. Hopefully folks are drying out, and we are so happy that you are with us this morning. And Ryan, we've got a very special guest and a lot to get to.
That's right. This morning, we're going to be spotlighting the Honolulu Rail Project, and joining us is HART Interim CEO Laura Kahikina. Good morning. Thanks so much for being here with us again this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
You know, there's always a lot to talk about when it comes to the rail, so we're going to dive right in. One of the headlines, of course, last week was the Honolulu City Council agreeing to allowing a portion of this new funding of the TAT to go towards this project. What can you tell us about this new funding source and just overall how this will impact the project moving forward?
Sure. And I would like to start that I am very grateful and humbled by all of the support that we received by both the City Council, administration, and of course our board. And we anticipate it's an additional $350 million based on the 1% for the first 2 years and 1.5% in perpetuity after that. Of course, it depends on how quickly the tourism recovers. We base that number on our actual revenues that we received for the month of June and just multiply it out by 10 years to 2030, 31. So it'll help close that gap that we're at, and extremely grateful for the opportunity.
Let's talk a little bit about that gap. The last time you were on here, I believe it was a lot higher than the new projected budget deficit. Where are we with that number, and how has it fallen so dramatically?
So sure, I know we're being criticized that it's funny money, if I could say, and that here we were at 3.5 and now miraculously just a few months later we're at 1.96. But there's some reasons behind that. When I first came in, I wanted to be as conservative as possible when we came out with the new estimate at completion, because we're trying to gain the public's trust. People, every time we turn around, HART has a new number and it's always increasing. It's not 5 billion, it's not 8, it's 9. So I asked my staff when I came in, please be as conservative as you can, put in all of the risk and contingency that you can. And so the number that we came out with in March was 12.5 billion, which is about 1 billion in financing. And with our expected funding, that's where the 3.5 came in. Well, since then, we've done quite a bit to close that gap, as we were committed to do when we came out with that number. We did a lot of streamlining that was highly publicized, both internal staff and our consultants. We were removing risk by making sure we have 100% design. So when we go out to bid, we have some good bids coming in. And the other thing is we hired TriUnity to do an independent analysis of our cost and schedule. And they came in and said, a little bit too conservative, Lori. We think you can reduce it by about $750 million. And the Malka shift, they said maybe about $166 million. And then the other thing is our revenue is higher than we anticipated earlier in this year. So the recovery from the GET, TAT is higher than anticipated by about $500 million. So that's where the 3.5 billion came down to 1.96. And we also reduced what we anticipate in financing costs from $1 billion down to 900 million.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people are happy when anytime the cost can come down, even
Sure.
a little, it's great for this project. You mentioned the Malka shift, and we talked about that in our last conversation. If you can update us about that Dillingham Corridor and how things are progressing there.
Yes, so our consultant is working on the designs. They should be 100% complete by the second quarter of next year, and then we give it to the city and the third-party stakeholders to approve. We would like to go out to bid for the Dillingham in the summer timeframe of next year and award by the end of next year. Our schedule shows that it's about 4 years just to do the Dillingham Corridor of utility relocations.
Wow, that is a tremendous amount of time.
Yes.
When Colleen Hanabusa, the HART board chair, was on here recently, she talked about the possibility of getting rid of some stations
Mm,
to perhaps
sure,
lower the cost even further. Because while the city
sure.
council is showing that support with the TAT, as you said right off the top, it's not going to fill the whole budget
Yes,
deficit.
yes.
Which stations would you think we could possibly lose, and would that save enough money?
It actually wouldn't save enough money. We estimate about 50 to 70 million per station, but it's still a big chunk. So there are some discussions about maybe moving the downtown station more west, eliminate the Chinatown. The Chinatown is probably the most expensive station because it's cantilevered, because you don't have a touchdown that you can do on the Mackay side because it's pretty much over the water. Moving it down so we can service both the downtown and Chinatown areas. There's 8 stations in the last 4 miles, so every half a mile there's a station. So the thought of temporarily eliminating and coming back later maybe to do the stations is what's being discussed. But I have to stress, this is not HART's decision alone. We have to discuss it with the HART board, administration, city council, and ultimately FTA.
I want to get back to the Dillingham Corridor, and
Mm.
you mentioned it could take 4 years, and that is just to for the electrical side. With that side, I mean, can the project continue on, and can the rail be built during that time, or are we looking at waiting that 4 years and then getting started on the actual construction of the rail?
That's a really good question. So the Dillingham corridor that we're talking about, it's not just the HECO lines. There are other lines that also need to be moved in the area, other utilities. So to answer your question, yes, we're not just going to sit around and wait the 4 years for the Dillingham to be done. That's why we actually procured east of that. We already put out the utility relocations for Evelay to Ward Avenue. And then we also have the plans ready to procure for Ivaley to Ala Moana. So we're actually going to work backwards from east to west. We can already start doing the guideway because that is the critical path is Dillingham. So get as much work done on the east side coming in, and then we're going to meet up at the Dillingham corridor.
But with that time frame, that those 4 years, it will be at least 4 years then before the full route is able to be completed. What are you thinking in
Yes.
terms of when? Let's talk about the full route completion date, and also when you think people might be able to ride it at least partially. There had been talk that could happen even this year. Obviously, that's come and gone. But what are we looking at now?
So our schedule is still the same, even when Triunity came back with our schedule for full completion is in the 2030, 2031 timeframe. But the interim, the operational readiness number 1, which is from Kapolei to the stadium, I'm going to get into this a little bit because we talked about that wheel rail interface and the welding that needs to be done. So the critical path for segment 1 is the welding. We had a third-party analysis come in and say that we can replace the wheels instead of the tracks, which is huge for us because it saves time and money. But they're still going to take about 1.5 years to replace all of the wheels. So in the interim, we did get approval to do a temporary weld fix to fill the gap so we could use either size wheel. And this is for through the frogs on the crossover. And we put out a procurement earlier this year to have a certified local welder do the work. But unfortunately, we didn't get any bids, and there's no Hawaii certified licensed contractor to do the manganese welding. So we went in front of DCCA a couple of weeks ago, and God bless them, they allowed us a conditional exemption. And what that means is we can go out to procurement and have a mainland company come in. They don't have to be licensed, but that exemption is only good till June or July of next year. And whoever we sign a contract with has 60 days to apply for Hawaii license. Now, this is long-term. We're going to need this skill set. So whoever we procure, part of that contract is to train a local contractor to make sure long-term Hitachi and DTS has this skill set to do work on the tracks. So if the welding gets done, we're anticipating 2 weeks. The bids are due this Friday. 2 months. We're anticipating 2 months of the work to be done. Hitachi has to do a lot of pre-testing. They have over 2,000 tests to be done. We're hoping they'll be done in the January timeframe. Then we go into trial running for a full 90 days without any glitches. If there's a glitch on the 89th day, the clock starts all over again. So if all the stars line up, the welding is done, the pre-testing is done, the 90 days is done, the soonest we can hand this over to the city is in the summer of next year. So July timeframe to hopefully open up the system. But that's quite a bit of stars to align to make sure that comes to fruition.
Yeah, and when we're talking about that, obviously that comes with an expense, and there was some debate over who is responsible for that and who's going to be paying for this. What is the ultimate answer? I mean, who will be responsible for some of these improvements that need to be made?
So we haven't discussed or started the commercial discussions yet with Hitachi. We wanted to get the solution done, which is the wheels, to replace the wheels. So they're already doing the design on the new wheels. Then they need to procure it and bring it in and swap it out on the trains. So we haven't started that discussion yet. I know everyone is anti. Even our board chair at the last meeting said, "Don't forget, Lori, who should be responsible for this?" I said, "I understand, Chair." So we have to start the negotiations soon.
If the process is now to essentially build two pieces and connect them at Dillingham within 4 years, I'm wondering, is Middle Street totally off the table? Where do you start that second half and build back? Or do you start at some point and still build forward? Can you help me understand?
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. Middle Street was never an option. I know many people are telling us to stop at Middle Street, so I'm glad you brought it up. We will not stop at Middle Street. We have enough funds, especially with this new TAT. We have enough funds to get to Chinatown right now. With the extra TAT, we have enough funds to get to downtown, which is a much more viable option. Middle Street will not work. The ridership is not there. The buses cannot turn left into the Middle Street transfer station over there. And worst of all, if we somehow put in some infrastructure that the buses can get there, get the people off of the trains to the buses, they're just going to sit in that traffic right there on Dillingham. We haven't accomplished what we needed to accomplish for the riders. So we have to get past Dillingham. We can get to downtown right now with our funding and the extra TAT. So to answer your question, we will be coming backwards from the east side and meeting up with the Middle Street station.
When we talk about Ala Moana and the end of the rail, where specifically will that station be? Has any of that been determined? What the end of this rail line would look like? And because I imagine it's going to take a large station coming to the end and some of the dynamics that happen at there. But what can you tell us about what's happening right there in that urban core of Ala Moana and Kaka'ako?
So I believe the station goes to Kona Street. That's where it terminates over there. The station locations pretty much have been set. I believe it's in the EIS, the Environmental Impact Statement. So that's about as much as I can say at this point.
And going back to the wheel replacement option, how will you decide who the local contractor is to get that training? Because I'm assuming that whoever gets that job will essentially have a job for life. So will there be some kind of a, I don't know, audition process or bidding process to become that person?
No, it's going to go through the normal procurement process. So the bidding that we're dealing right now on the welds, part of that contract is to train a local contractor. I'm not sure how the local contractor gets selected. More than likely, it'll be a local contractor who already has the welding license here. Now, because we don't want to start from scratch and just train somebody who has no welding expertise. We're going to train a welder, a professional welding company already so that they can do the manganese, but it's going to have to go through the normal procurement process.
You know, you've been brought onto this project as the interim CEO, and in our last conversation, you had expressed interest in keeping this role and continue to see this project forward. How have things been like for you in this role, and is this something that you do want to continue doing and seeing through it to the end?
Sure. No, thank you for that question. I know people ask me, you must be crazy, but I do love it. I love it. It's challenging. I love the technical and even the financial aspects, but we'll find a solution. But it's the other part that I wasn't anticipating, the politics that's involved, the many stakeholders to get together and make sure we're not offending anyone and making sure the timing of how we notify people is met. I ran into a little bit of glitches in the beginning in the March timeframe, and accidentally stepping on toes. So I'm still learning on that part. But to answer your question, yes, I'm very interested. The board has graciously offered me a contract. I did sign it, and the board chair signed it this week also. So it's going to go into effect January 1st of next year. I know I'm going to anticipate you're probably going to ask me what the terms are. So my salary stays the same at $275,000 per year, and I know that's a lot of money. People criticize, "Well, that's a lot of money. You're getting paid the highest city paid employee," although I'm not, but I am getting paid more than the mayor and most of the other directors. But I do want to put it in perspective that I paid less than my predecessors, and across the nation, the CEOs normally make between $315,000 to $430,000. So, but I'm not belittling. It is a lot of money, and I am very humbled. As a civil servant, it is a lot of money. And the other term of my contract, it is 2 years with the third year automatic renewal unless the board decides otherwise.
Okay. I know that when you had been on in the past, there was discussion of possible meetings with the FTA in person in Washington. Well, can you tell us how that relationship has been thus far, and what kind of interactions you've had?
Sure. So we physically, Mayor and I could not go and meet with Naria, the new administrator. They had more restrictive COVID restrictions than us. So we did meet with her virtually, and our relationship with FTA is really solid. We meet with them at least at the Region 9 level. Ray tell us on a regular basis. They hired a project management oversight consultant, which we meet with them constantly, minimally every month, and then we meet with the FTA quarterly. And we just had the quarterly last week, and the feedback that we received from FTA is they're very pleased with our management team and how things are going. They feel like we're being open, honest, and transparent. Even with the bad news, we're open. Here it is, and here's what we're going to try and do to solve the issue. So I think we have a very solid and positive relationship with FTA.
And if you can clarify the federal support through this new infrastructure package, will any funds be able to be used here? I know that there was some discussion there, but if you can just clarify that, if any of that money is coming towards this project.
Yes, unfortunately, no. I did speak to FTA directly to see if there's any opportunities for HART. Unfortunately, the infrastructure bill is for new starts and existing systems. So unfortunately, we're right in the middle of that. We're not a new starts. We already have a full funding grant agreement with FTA, and we're not in operations yet. So, but the one good thing about that infrastructure bill is we had $500 million from our original FFGA grant that was going to expire at the end of this year. So Senator Schatz was able to get language in there to extend it another 2 years. So that's a positive for us.
So with the council money, obviously that helps. Possibly losing a station or combining a station, at least temporarily, downtown and Chinatown helps. But there is still quite a bit of money that is left over in the deficit. Where do you anticipate those funds coming from? If it's not the federal government, are you looking at more bonds, or what are the options?
Right. So with the new TAT, we're hoping we have bonding capacity to increase our bonding capacity. There might be other opportunities with other federal funds. We don't qualify for this package here. We're still trying to see if we can do any other cost savings. We already did quite a bit of streamlining with our staffing, but is there anything else on the construction side that we can look at? We already reduced the risk. Like I mentioned earlier, making sure we have 100% designs, but it's a tough one. I think we're going to have to still take a look at extending the GET, TAT, going back to the legislature, not indefinitely, maybe just a few years to fill that gap. But we're trying to look at every opportunities that we have.
Although that the city council did approve this, that there was some criticism by some council members just with the project overall, and some concern that was expressed during this deliberation process. I'm wondering if you can talk and speak to how you will be managing those concerns of the city council members, knowing that you'll have to work with them moving forward and potentially asking for more money down the line. How do you address some of those concerns that they had?
No, they're fair. They're very fair. And I've only came here beginning of this year, and I'm trying to address things as they come along going forward. I cannot go back in the past, but their concerns are valid. And so, but you cannot delve in the past. I cannot correct those things. What's done is done. I do feel it wasn't done as prudently and expeditiously as we could have. That's why, for example, that city center utility relocation contract that we had in place. So one of the first things I did was cancel that contract. We spent about $100 million on that contract. Initially, I was told, and I think I said this publicly, we got 7% of physical work done. Well, I'm just finding out a couple of weeks ago that even that 7% is not valid because we didn't get sign off from the city and the third party stakeholders. So it's really just, we spent $100 million and got nothing in return. So when council members or the public are concerned about things like that, I can't disagree with them. All I can offer is, going forward, I'm going to do things differently, do things prudently, expeditiously. And if I can stand on my record with how I performed at ENV on that consent decree projects, we met every deadline and we stayed under budget on those projects. So I'm going to do the same thing here at HART.
I want to ask you, I know that you said that hopefully if the stars align, and there certainly are a lot, that you can get at least the station going to Halawa. A lot of people are so focused on the airport because that not only would help Kama'aina going to the airport, but perhaps could open up a new corridor for a different kind of visitor that wants to not go to Waikiki, but go in the other direction. How soon could we see an airport? This is just my ignorance on how the stations themselves work. Can you open them sort of one at a time as the line goes down? Or do you have to do, certain sectors in tandem?
Sure. That is a really good question because Mayor asked the same thing of us. Like, well, if I don't want to open up to the stadium, can we just wait until we get to the airport? Same things you're saying. Unfortunately, how it works, construction-wise, yes, that would make sense. But what follows the physical construction of the guideway and the stations is our core systems. This is the communications, the automatic controls with the trains, and it's done in a series all one time. So imagine maybe like an electrical system. It's all done in series, and then you cannot just cut it off here and there. So unfortunately, it would need to go all the way to Middle Street. So our time frame of that part being completed to Middle Street is 2024.
And so 2024 could possibly be, if everything, again, if all the stars align and things are on track, 2024 may be the earliest that we could see that route from the airport connecting those residents on the Kapolei side of the island.
Correct.
And if you are able to get things operational by, say, middle of next year with, these faulty frogs and getting all those things repaired, getting it to the stadium. I mean, I think the last time you said you guys can hand over the keys to the city, but it is still their decision whether or not to decide if they actually want to run that. Have you had any of those preliminary conversations with this administration about if that is something that they would want to pursue?
Yes. No, that's a really good question because Roger Martin and I were very committed to get the thing moving because it generates excitement and a reality for the public that this is really real. This is really, and it is very impressive. I'm getting goosebumps now. When you go out to the west side and you actually visit the Rail Operations Center, it's very impressive what has been constructed so far. So get people on the trains and excited. And what we see across our industry is people are against it, but once they get on the train, it's like, wow, this is really cool. I don't have to drive. I can work while I'm on the train. And then when is it coming to my side? When are you going to extend the rail to my area? So I think Mayor is on board. I can't speak for him, but I think he's warming up to the thought of let's open this up and let the public get on.
Now that your contract is finalized and becomes official January 1, that's very soon. And this project is yours for at least the next 2, if not the next 3 years. How do you change that public perception? I mean, the story that you just told us about essentially throwing away $100 million when I think about, the schools that could help, or
Oh,
the public
yes.
health, I mean, all of those, the homeless issue, I can think of a lot of things, and I'm sure a lot of people watching can think of a lot of things that they would like to see $100 million go to. So how do
Yes.
you change the way people feel about this project, given that this is now your job for at least 2, if not 3 years?
Sure. That's a fair question. And I try to be open, honest, and transparent. Like what I just shared about the 100 million. We don't hide things, good or bad. We're very open and honest about things, and just try to start changing the perception of HART. We're trying to do things better, smarter, and always what's in the best interest of the taxpayers. Changing the culture within HART. It starts with my managers, and I always stress to them, when you're making a decision, what's in the best interest of the taxpayers, not what's in the best interest of you or me, for them. And then just one by one, I'm just going to have to start gaining the trust of the public by being as honest as I can.
And if I could ask one clarification on the salary question, is it $275,000 a year? That's the end, or are there options for bonuses or other incentives there?
Yes. So thank you for asking that. This contract that I have now, the interim, there is a bonus. I think it's up to maximum 20%, but that's at the discretion of the board. This year I had quarterly evaluations, and then my last quarter ends December, and then I have to give information to them that they could evaluate me on. The next one is annual evaluations, but yes, the bonuses are all at the discretion of the board.
As we've seen this project come along, we've seen how it has impacted communities just from the construction standpoint. And I'm thinking, as this project moves into the urban core, obviously there are a lot more businesses, there are a lot more traffic in the area. How are you going to approach maybe some of those businesses out in the urban core that are a little hesitant and are worried about the impact that this construction will have on their own business and livelihood?
Sure, that's very fair. Fair concern for them. We need to try and minimize the impact on them, but we're going to already start the public outreach to the businesses and to the community before we even get shovel to ground, understand their concerns, and see how we can help them. We're doing it out on the west side. We have every week we do an email blast out, and we focus on one company. Maybe they're having a discount if you try to come in, but we need to work with both the public and the businesses to make sure we minimize as much impacts as we can, because especially the traffic, right? When we were working on the Dillingham, we had such a major impact on the community. So we want to minimize as much as we can and communicate as best we can.
The half hour goes fast. We're almost out of time. Just wanted to get your final thoughts this morning.
Oh, my final thoughts. Let's see. I am truly honored that the board has allowed me to stay on a few more years, and I am committed. Tommy Waters asked me at City Council, he's, based on my reputation at E&V, we didn't have to use a lot of the contingency money. So he says, I'm counting on you to perform the same way for HART. And that is my commitment. I said, that is my intent, Chair Waters. That is my commitment to you, to the council, to the board, to the community, that I'm going to do my best for this project, for the community, and try to do things as expeditiously and prudently as we can.
All right, Laurie Kahikina from HART, thank you so much for taking time this morning and updating us. It's always a great to hear from you, as well as getting updates on where we're at. So thanks so much for joining us, and happy holidays. Aloha.
Well, a lot of news packed into that last half hour. Of course, a headline there would be that she is taking the job permanently, effective January 1. Salary will stay the same. As she did note, she's paid more than the mayor and quite a few other city employees, but less than some of her, counterparts in different rail systems on the mainland, $275,000 a year, plus potential bonus of up to 20% at the discretion of the HART board. But what stands out clear here is that she's very committed to this project, 2 years at least, with an option for a third year.
Yeah, and coming into really just trying to, understand the project, but she's also had to find ways to, of course, fund this project. Talking about the different funding mechanisms, of course, very grateful that the City Council did approve that TAT tax allocation that goes directly to this project. Of course, the restructuring of this TAT after the last legislative session has allowed the counties the discretion to decide where that money will go to with that extra 3%. And so she is thankful for that, knowing that that will help to move this project forward. She also reiterated what we heard from Colleen Hanabusa, that Middle Street is just not an option, just ending it there. Just from a technical standpoint, from a logistical standpoint with the bus operations, and saying that they do have enough money right now as projected to get at least to downtown, and they will continue to work to find that funding mechanisms and square things off so that the project can go to its full completion at Ala Moana Center.
If the stars align, we could be riding the train by next summer. And then she did talk about sort of just how complicated that Dillingham corridor is and having to move those lines. And so that part of the project could take up to 4 years. In the meantime, though, they're not going to just wait for that. They're going to build from one side, from the other side up, and then one side down, and hopefully meet in the middle. So that is all ready to go. So very interesting to hear her thoughts on Middle Street there, as you noted, Ryan, because we keep seeing that people talk about that. It was discussed a lot in the mayoral campaign. You know, the Blandriardi saying, if it doesn't pencil, we end where it ends. And she's saying that Middle Street is not where it is going to end.
Yeah, we just heard a lot of overall an effort to just be very clear and transparent. I mean, you heard her say transparency a number of times throughout this interview in hopes of helping to ease some of the public skepticism behind this project. She says she recognizes that there are those who are, of course, concerned about the budget, the timeline, and everything that has transpired. But she's saying, really, I can't do anything about the past. All I can do is look forward and help us to continue to move this project forward. I will say that, you know, for us, having her on the show, they have been open to coming on Spotlight Hawaii, where, you know, in past, maybe others may have not wanted to publicly be on this forum, but we are grateful for the opportunity to get these updates, and we'll certainly try to get her back on once again sometime in the new year.
Yeah, really great to hear from her. Speaking of transparency, an agency that is calling for that is the Board of Water Supply in regard to the Navy and what has transpired with Red Hill. We are going to be talking to Ernie Lau. He, of course, is the chief engineer at the Board of Water Supply on Friday. We want to get a deep dive into what's going on with Red Hill, the relationship with the Navy, what should happen next. We know that the Navy is pushing back on the governor's order to shut down that facility indefinitely. They're saying that they are going to contest that. So there's a lot of legal wrangling. But bottom line, you know, everyone who lives here wants to know, is our water safe? And we're going to be discussing that with Ernie Lau, who, Ryan, as we've seen in these press conferences, is very passionate about protecting Oahu's water supply.
Yeah, important conversation. We hope you'll join us here on Friday at 10:30. Until then, stay safe and aloha.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Beachside Roofing.